This is a very quick intro to cymbal sounds, working with samples and reversing samples. Got a special request about the sound in Stereo Madness from Geometry Dash. That sound right there. You hear it fall down, and then you can hear it returning. It's rising, and then if you want to make use of a cool sound like that, there are a few ways to go about it. One direct approach is simply to sample it, capture it as it is, like I did for this video. But that's pretty limited because not only is it not original, but it's also not as flexible, because if you just use something directly, you don't have as much control over the sound. So let's try to understand the sound and find a way to make it ourselves. So that sound is composed of a lot of high frequencies and noise. It sounds like a cymbal crash. So if you know the name of a category of sounds, that can help you in your sound design. I'm going to pop over to Renoise for a moment because Bitwig doesn't yet have a spectrogram, and Renoise has an excellent one built in. Renoise is actually free as a demo. It's also very affordable if you want a powerful DAW in a classic tracker style. Let's take a look at the sound that I captured out of that video. This is the Stereo Madness before the spaceship sound. And we can see what that sound looks like. There's different ways to view it. If you load it up as an instrument and double click, then you can see the actual waveform. This is the sample data that tells the computer how to play the sound. Basically, each of these little blips here, are samples, and the distance from center tells your speaker essentially how far to move forward or backward. And this all happens very, very quickly to produce the sound. And of course, the farther from center it is, the more power there is in that signal at that moment. And toward the end here, we get more volume here. It's getting louder over time. And at the very beginning, it's pretty soft. So that is the target sound. We can find cymbals that sound similar. So it's not that one. That one's a little bit similar. That one's maybe a little bit similar. Let's load that one in. Okay, so here we can see its waveform, and it's very loud at the beginning, and it gets softer over time. There's another way to look at these sounds, and that is the spectrogram. So let's click that, and if you don't see this color code here on the left, if you don't see this kind of view, just right click, go to the drawing mode. Once you're on spectrum, you can go into the drawing mode and select the spectrogram. There are other ways of showing the sound. Standard spectrum analyzer, which Bitwig does have. But for now, let's take a look at the spectrogram. I really like this view. It's a powerful tool for understanding what a sound basically looks like. So if we play a sound, you can see how the power is distributed across the frequency spectrum and over time. The way this works is the brighter the color at a particular frequency, the louder it is at that frequency. You can see what frequency we're looking at with the mouse up here at the top. And this crash has a lot of power along a lot of frequencies in the high range above 1K. And if we go back to the Stereo Madness sound, you can see that it also has a lot of power distributed in that same range. It's not as much because it's a generally quieter sound, but all different kinds of cymbals are going to have that kind of distribution. There you go. This is a good one. This may actually be even closer than a crash potentially. All right, but we can see again, this is starting loud and going soft. The trick that's happening in Stereo Madness is that they're actually reversing a cymbal-like sound. So let's see what that sounds like if we reverse the Stereo Madness. Now you can hear a little bit of similarity. There's a little bit of a pop at the beginning. There's kind of like a snare-like pop. But it's basically a cymbal that's reversed. All right, so what happens if we reverse one of these guys? You can actually do a shortcut, Control R. Yeah, it's pretty similar. Same with the hi-hat. If we Control R, reverse. There, now you can see how similar that is. Now there's a little bit of other noise from the music in there as well, but that's the essence of the sound. So let's search for crash in samples up here in the browser. And there's actually this whole set of cymbal crash sounds. And creating good crash sounds is a whole art. There's a lot of acoustic instruments that do it well. For now, let's just use one of these samples and see if we can turn it into something that sounds like what's in Geometry Dash. So let's grab that and bring it on here. And you can see that it starts out loud and then it gets quieter over time. But in Geometry Dash, we heard it rising and getting louder over time. It starts soft and then it gets louder. So how would you accomplish that? Well, in Bitwig, you can just reverse a clip. Go up here and say reverse. There it is. A good sample is really just a starting point. You can shape the sound into something of your own by adding effects. That's one way. Let's put a reverb on there. You can hear how it continues to sound after the sample ends. Without that reverb, it stops immediately right there. But with the reverb, let's put a little tail on there. You can really hear it keep on going. And I think that's what's happening in that Geometry Dash sound. There's some delay or reverb effects that are extending the sound and smoothing it to blend with the rest of the track. So let's put on the wet effects a delay. All right, we'll bring that delay time down a little bit. And what the wet effects does is it processes everything in the reverb and then the final output goes through the wet effects. So this is kind of like the last bit of processing you want to do after exiting the reverb. But yeah, it's still contained within the reverb. That's how nesting of devices works in Bitwig. It's a really powerful design. All right. Let's see. All right. Now it's kind of a rich sound. That's basically all there is to it. There's another way to make that sound, and that is to synthesize it. We can go in here and find a hat. The E-hat is actually a noise generator, essentially, with lots of effects applied to it. It's originally, I think, designed to create hi-hat type sounds, but you can shape it. You can make it take longer by extending the attack. You can make it last longer after release by extending the decay. And look at this. You can change the frequency. So you can modulate that frequency with an envelope. There are various kinds of envelopes. One that is very classic is the ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, release. We'll put that envelope on this frequency here. Let's modulate that frequency. There we go. Whoop. Let's mute that for now. Just focus on this hi-hat. Play that sound. That's it. You can see it starts with a high frequency and then it drops down. Let's see if we can reverse that so that it'll work well with that reversed crash. We can go create a clip and put a note on there. There are a lot of different settings that you can mess with on the E-hat to shape the sound. You can change the attack. You can mess with a comb filter effect. There's a lot of modulation and different kinds of things you can do just with this one device. You can mess with the settings to see how things sound. But if you're finding that it's not sounding right, don't hesitate to try something completely different. There's so many different ways to make risers and crash sounds or any kind of sound. You can even make the sound with your voice. You can just record it into a microphone. That's essentially what's happening with that sound. You can just record it even with your voice or an acoustic instrument, or you could try all different kinds of synthesizers. The point is that you have some freedom in how you create your sound, and it just depends on what you want to hear and what you want to use in your music. And very often with sound design, it helps to layer different sounds to get a more rich combined sound. So let's try that. When you have a sound you like, sometimes it helps to just convert to pure audio so that you can manipulate it and integrate it with other sounds. So let's convert this clip into pure audio by shortening it and then selecting it, hit Control B. Okay, that's a little bit quiet. Let's undo that. Let's turn up the volume and test it out. Yeah, we can see we're still not clipping here, even at maximum volume. So let's just keep that high volume. Control B. Now we've got this clip. There's the audio for that note that was playing through the E-hat device. All right, let's see what that sounds like by itself. Solo that. There it is. All right, now let's make it work with this one by reversing. Yeah, that's the same basic idea right there. They're working together. You can hear them in different combinations of volume by manipulating the faders. If you turn this one way down, then you mostly hear the E-hat. You can combine them at different volumes. All right, but what we're noticing here is that this crash, because we had a reverb on there, it's lasting longer. So what if you want to get that reverb sound to work on both of these? Well, you can select both and hit Control G to group them. You can go here, select the reverb, Control X to cut, go back to the group and paste it. Now that effect is applied to both of these tracks. These tracks by themselves are just playing audio or an E-hat, but through the group, they get a reverb effect as well. One last tip about integrating these sounds into your music. It helps to capture the full results of your sound design into a concrete sample that you can then easily play in your music. So we've got this group here with a few different elements, and we want to capture all of this into a reusable sample. We can hear that it kind of fades out. If you watch this group level here, we can hear that it's done about here. So it's about 2 bars long. So let's use the time select tool. You can press 1, 2. There's 2 there. Select the time range here, and then right click that time range, and you can say bounce. And we could just say okay. And this is a sample containing all of that. So if we mute that whole group, collapse it, just hearing this one sound here, it's got our full sound. If we have a drum machine, we can actually take this sample and put it directly onto a pad. Bitwig gives some options for slicing it, but we don't really need to bounce it or slice it. We can just take raw and just do the full audio event. We have the sound on this pad, but as soon as you let go of the note or the audition play, it stops. And that's because the mode here is AHDSR, attack, hold, decay, sustain, release. If we change that to shot, then when you play it, no matter how long you play it for, it'll just go ahead and play that full sound. There are a few more details that you need to consider if you're producing professional quality music. For example, we didn't really care that this is a low amplitude sample. We didn't apply any kind of EQ or anything like that. But the general idea is here. If you have a sound that you like and you want to reuse it, you can capture it and play it in a drum machine, and you can integrate it into your music. And that's the essence of what's happening in Geometry Dash. Give it a try with different music and see how you like the sound in context, and have fun.